Hey guys, so in previous video I completely disassembled Huben K1 version 2 and discussed a little bit what you can do to improve its performance, and in this video we're just gonna reassemble it. That's it. Just put everything together. I will comment in between a little bit, but as little as possible. So okay, so let's start. First we will reassemble the action. Okay, so first the valve, we'll put the valve back in. Okay, so just throw it in, and you might need to use some Allen key or something just to remove the trigger sear out of the way. Okay, it's inside. And then afterwards it goes the part on which the sear catches on and the spring pushes on. So now that we push it in, we will hear a click from the trigger catching it. No click. Yeah, that's because it's not out of the way. Let's get it out of the way. Safety off. Click. It's inside. And afterwards comes the spring with not baffled, again, I lost the word. Well, it will hit this and this will dampen the blow. Okay, 2 screws. That's number 3, Allen key. My daughters are playing in the other room. Okay, tighten this down, but not too much again, no need, with feeling. Okay, next thing we can do is we can put the pin back in. So this time we'll put the O-rings, the 2 small O-rings on the pin, and then we'll put it inside. It doesn't matter how it's turned because it's the same on each side, the pin I mean. It doesn't want to go in. Let's rearrange that. I guess I will have to put the O-rings in first. I will just get a close-up so you can see this, what I'm doing. Hopefully good enough. Okay, I will try to keep my hands in the frame. So I'm putting the O-rings inside, I'm just pushing them in. They should sit on the back side correctly. It'll be easier with slightly bigger Allen key. Yeah, like this. Okay, they're seated. Now we'll just throw the pin in and push it slightly. Make sure it's going through. Okay, it's protruding on the other side, so it should be good. And now I will just screw in the brass part with the seal. I have this well looped, so I don't need to lube it anymore, but otherwise it's never a bad idea to have some silicone spray and just spray all the seals. It's always a good thing to do with the seals. Or even have silicone grease, which is even better. we took this one out just for seeing if okay. So now I will put back in the springs that regulate the trigger. So the middle one, this is the correct turn. The middle one is the second stage, and we said that this spring has to be the original one. So if you have it off safe, and when you screw it in, you can feel some free slop now. This is what is going to be our first stage, and the second stage should be slightly harder. So this is the slop, and this is the second stage, which I do feel the spring tension on it. That's the correct way. You should feel some spring tension. And the second one, which is the replacement spring, the weaker spring that we put in, so this is not the original one, which will make our gun much our trigger better, so lighter, and we will use this spring for our first stage. Originally, as you remember from the first part, so from the disassembly, originally this was our second stage, first part of second stage. So now I will adjust this spring so the first part doesn't have any slop anymore, just there's under spring tension, but very weak spring tension. This is going to be a first stage, and the second stage will be this forward movement. So that's fine for me. You can adjust it as you like. Just make sure that the middle one is tight enough so that you have a, let's say, stiff enough second stage to have for the gun to be safe. That's the only reason why you should do that. Okay, so let's put in back in the gauge. We have over here the spring already inside. We'll just put this little pin inside, which locks the gauge when it's in place. So we have the pin, and we can put it either from this side and rotate it, or from this side and rotate it. It doesn't matter. So I'll put it from this side, push it in, and rotate it until it clicks. Click, so it is in a correct position. Okay, let's put the indexing mechanism back in. So this is the indexing mechanism. You have to turn it so it's aligned with the magazine. So you have to put it like, it's hard for me to look when I'm turning it, but let's see it like this. You cannot put it wrong because it doesn't go wrong. It won't fit. So over here it has space for the indexing disengagement, so for the lever, and down there it's place for a spring, for this spring. By the way, this spring is very important, the tightness of this spring. So if you replace it, for example, if you want to use K1 in a very low pressure situation, you can do this by exchanging the spring for a softer one, and in that case it will already index at lower pressures. I'm not sure how good the K1 is actually in lower pressures in terms of accuracy and consistency, but it will index at least, because with this spring it indexes from about 110 or 120 bars on. And that is only in case if you have a very loose magazine. For example, if you have a pellet that is catching on something, or if you hold the magazine a little bit, it won't turn it. So that's important to know. Okay, so this is in. Now we cover this with this lever assembly. Don't forget that you have to have this small piece inside. So you put it over this. So let's put a screw in, and now just the middle one, just screw it, and so the spring doesn't throw everything apart. You always have to be careful because it's very easy to lose these parts. They're very small and under spring tension, which is the worst. See, it almost happened to me. It's will do it like this, facing me, which is easier for me, but you cannot see that well, so. Let's move to a better Allen key. I prefer to use this one. This is easier because you can use one hand to screw it in. Much easier, see? And when you place this part, make sure that this side is flushed, or even this lever mechanism, lever assembly is slightly lower because magazine is traveling that way over here. So you might not able to regulate it because the screw will hold it in place, but if you can, definitely make sure that it's not protruding out of this. So this should be lower than this. Okay, we have two screws. I haven't tightened any of them yet. I'll just put them in for now. I will tighten them when I have it in place and all three inside. So, okay. So the lever is now up. This is lever down. I'm not sure if you can see this, but in my case this is slightly higher than this. So this is fine. So I will just go ahead and tighten it like this. And also on the top part, this part is it's high enough so the pellet or bullet cannot catch itself. So this is okay position for me. I'll just tighten it. And don't over tighten it, as I mentioned before in the first part. Okay, and let's do the same on the other side. And this is plastic, so make sure that you definitely don't over tighten this one because the plastic will crack if you do that. Yeah, much better with this Allen key than with the regular one. Okay, again, make sure that this part is higher because the pellets are moving that way over here. And over here it's actually not important because over here the chamber is of the magazine are actually empty because they're after the shots. But if you rotate the magazine without shooting, then it again should not be higher in order not to get stuck. Okay, so we have the trigger, so basically the springs for the trigger. We have both sides reassembled, and now we can reassemble the closing valve. So first we have to put in the seal. Make sure it's turned correctly. So if you have the mechanism turned this way, you have to have the seal like this. So basically the hole has slightly under angle hole in order to seal the valve. So when you throw it in, you might not it might not land correctly. So just repeat it until it's orientated correctly. Okay, I got it. Here is the closing valve. So you just throw it in. It doesn't matter how you rotate it. It just matters that these three legs are on the bottom part. So this go in. Just throw it in. That's it. And then you screw on this part with the spring. So this spring has to be inside. All of this has to be looped. So inside here it's good that you have some silicone spray or lube or grease. Sorry. And what you do now is actually just screw this in. Again, as I explained in the first video, it is possible that this part will actually not be attached to this brass part when you take the gun apart. It's possible that it will stay on this part, which is also okay. Just in that case you will have this over here, and over here you will have only the brass part. So that's either way it's okay. This is just a tube that it's there for the correct position of Okay, make sure that this seal doesn't protrude out when you screw it in, so you don't damage it. Okay, next, what's next? Again, this doesn't have to be tightened. You don't even have to use the Allen key. The only reason why you want to have this tightened is if you drain the air before you start to take off the stock, because in that case this will screw instead of this or this, and in that case it's better to have it screwed well in. That's the only reason, but not for safety or functional reasons. Okay, I believe we fully assembled the action. One thing I forgot to mention in part 1, over here there's another hole when you can put another screw in. This one is that you can actually adjust for the second stage when it starts. So basically for our case, now that we did this change, it would actually mean that we would get rid of first stage, and that's something we don't want to do. But if you want to use the stock version, so the first stage is actually in the trigger, then you can actually have the screw in to get rid of this slight slop, which is for now the first stage. But for the stock version is actually an unwanted additional length of pull, which is added to the second stage. So you can adjust by this, but again, don't go too far, otherwise you will the gun will be unsafe, of course. For example, now I have the safety on, so now I have only the first slop, and the second part, which is the second stage, is not possible to move. And if I turn the safety off, I have the first slop, and then I can go forward. So this is good indication that you have this set up correctly. I believe we are we have assembled this fully. So let's reassemble the tube. I did clean the tube a little bit with some Ballistol and all the external parts, because they're all dirty now, because of the there's a lot of lead residue everywhere. So I will just screw in the end cap, which is for fill port. So this is our main tube, the high pressure tube, the unregulated tube. And then let's reassemble the regulator first. So we have this tube here. Again, this should all be greased. I already have it, so I don't need to do it now. Make sure that this is also well greased. I will just apply a small amount of silicone spray on it. The grease is already on it. And then just place it in the side where the threads are, like this. That's it. It should go fairly easy. I usually also put some silicone spray inside. And then make sure that this side where the seal is clean, and just put it in. So this is the rod with the spring washers, and then the end nut, which is there for regulating the pressure. Just a couple of turns. You don't have to. You must not, of course, tighten it, because this is for regulating the pressure. And then when you did all this, make sure that there is maybe it's best if I show you the seal, which is inside here. So there is one more seal, or maybe even two. There's a room. Yeah, it's one. Yeah, it's two. Yeah. Actually, one of them is a seal, and second one is like a spacer. So this seal you can put on directly on this rod, and then the spacer like this. That should be it. Sorry, I put it wrong. It first should be spacer, and then the seal, like this. And you can. Oh, no, it was correct before. Sorry. I forgot, it was a while since I did it. First O-ring, and then this small plastic part. And this rod does go up and down when the regulator is in operation. So all of this you can apply a little bit of silicone spray or even better grease. The grease I already have on, so I just spray a little bit and then just thread it in. Again, no need to use wrenches to tighten them down. If you like, you can do it just a little bit, but there's no need because this is held in by pressure. Just make sure it's fully seated. That's the important part. Okay, so now as I explained before, the side where it has two holes goes in the bigger cylinder. First I will just clean my hands a little bit so I don't make the cylinder dirty on the outside again. Okay, and let's take the cylinder, where is it here? So the high pressure cylinder, the long one, and just thread in the side which has two holes, two small holes inside. You can also spray it a little bit to make sure that you have a good seal, so you don't have any leaks. Again, no tightening required, just screw it fully in. And then the same thing with the smaller, the regulated chamber. Just put it on and thread it in. And this one, actually, you even cannot, won't be able to screw it fully in because you will have to control the position of this nozzle, which is then connected to the action. And I will show you now. For example, now that I threaded fully in, the nozzle is not in the correct position in regards to the regulator. It will have to be like this. So it will even have to be untightened, but that's not a problem because the seal is in here, and as soon as there's a pressure in, it will hold it like this, and it's not necessary to have it tightened. Okay, this is the cylinder assembled, fully assembled, so we're done with that. And now actually it's the best thing is to put the barrel on the action. Don't forget to put the magazine on, of course, as well. In, not on. As you can see, my magazine is I slightly drag it through the sandpaper to make this end of holes less sharp, and I also polished a little bit inside of the magazine, although this is hard to do because magazine has grooves inside, as I mentioned, and let me show you these grooves. Not sure if you can see them, and because of that you cannot polish this by rotating. You have to go in and out and in and out, and this is a time-consuming thing to do. But in any case, I don't think it's necessary. The important part is that you have this surface smooth, so it doesn't stick on the barrel or anything. Okay, so now you put magazine in the barrel, so you have to put the upper part first in and then push it slightly up to overcome the spring of the catch that pushes the magazine in place, and then just push it on the ball bearing. It's easier if you manage to push it on each side equally, but this time it didn't work for me like I wanted to. And it's really stuck up there. Yeah, it happens. Oh. So just start with the upper part, push it up a little bit, and then make sure it goes easy on. Don't push it on one side only. Make sure you even it up, otherwise it will get stuck up there. Okay, you can check the alignment if you want. In my case, it's good. It should be good because I haven't changed anything to it. And then you can join the barrel with the magazine with the action, simply by putting it together and screw in those screws on the top of the barrel. It's 2.5 millimeter, I think, the Allen key. Make sure that you wiggle it a little bit, because if you just apply force and force it down, you can break the indexing pin if it doesn't sit correctly in the magazine, inside of the magazine. So now just tighten those two screws. You can tighten this quite a bit, of course, with feeling, because this is small, relatively small screw. So, but these two need to be tightened, because there is a force when you fire on these two screws. And don't forget to tighten this one as well on the bottom. Okay, that should be good. Just let me tighten it a little bit more. Okay, but not over tighten. Okay, we have the barrel and the action joined together. Now we can start with the putting in the cylinder, and you have to pay attention how this hole is rotated, so placed. So you put it in, and then you rotate it like this, and then make sure it's correctly on the top, so this hole flushed with this dent. Put the small metal piece that holds it in place and the screw that goes inside. Allen key to do this easier. Tighten this screw. Okay, So now this shouldn't rotate anymore, but you can still rotate this whole part because this one is not fully thread in, or this one, it doesn't matter. One of them will not be fully tightened, and that's correct. And now we can, well, if you didn't make any modifications to your cheek piece, then now it's very important that you continue putting it on by sliding it through the end of the barrel, through the muzzle, and going back all the way. So now it's fully on. Okay, and after that, immediately the assembly for the barrel and the cylinder clamp. So put it like this and then just slide it back. Okay, don't tighten it yet, because I actually recommend that you tighten it only at the very end when you have everything installed. That way you will know that the rotation of the regulator, so basically now you can still rotate where the regulator is facing, and you will need that, you need to adjust this in the end in order to have this in appropriate location for to get through the whole of the stock and access it. So now I usually put on the trigger. So as I mentioned before, this is in the part 1. This trigger has this screw fully screwed in, not tightened, but fully screwed in. So basically there is no first stage here, there is only first stage of the back side of the trigger. So you place this in and you put the pin through. If you tighten that screw before the pin was inserted, then you might have to untighten it in order to get the pin in. In my case it went perfectly well. And now make sure that this clamps are slided fully back, and place the trigger, so this part, the trigger rod, to the rear part of the trigger with this special nut. I believe it's 6 millimeter. You need a 6 millimeter key to do that. Yeah, it's 6 millimeter. And just screw it in. Probably easier to start it by hand, and then afterwards continue with the screwdriver. Okay. And with this rod you can also control location of your trigger. So for example, before we did what we did here, if I wanted the trigger to be slightly more back or more forward, you can do this by unscrewing this screw back out and then unthreading this. If you unthread this, the trigger will be located more in the rear. If you thread this in, the trigger will be located more in the front. So for me, I like it a little bit in the back, more in the back, so this is a good choice for me. But don't forget that in order to do this, you have to have these two clamps in place. If you have them slightly forward, you see that the trigger is actually moving when I do this. So just make sure you do that. And slightly tighten this screw in the back. Okay. Now we can actually adjust the position and tighten the screws, these two screws. The front one is still not in because you don't have the shroud in yet. So what you have to do is, I will show it for you now and then I will later do it for myself. You have to look from this side and you have to align this with this. So this one has to be in the middle. It cannot be like this, you see. I can still now rotate it in the side. See? Of course, this one has to be perfectly aligned with the back side in order to be in the correct place. So I will do that now. I have to point it to my eye to do that. So make sure it's right in the middle between the trigger and the rear power adjustment knob. And when you do that, make sure that this is the clamps are held back, and then take 3mm Allen key and just tighten these two screws. The front one again is still not in. You don't have to tighten it fully now, just so it clamps the cylinder and the barrel, so it's fixed. And then check again. And I even don't tighten them fully until I actually put the stock on, because when the stock is still not off, when the stock is still off, you cannot really know if if the hole in stock will actually fit in this location where our regulator now is. Okay, so I noticed that this screw on the trigger is a little loose on mine, so I will just slightly tighten it. But again, I'm not tightening it enough to be tightened, just to make sure there is no slop. Okay, that should be good enough. So now, as you can see, what we did before, I'll put this a little forward. So here is our back side of the trigger, and here is our actual trigger. You see that this is now our first stage, and it's that short. And right after that, let me put it off safe. Right after that, we will have our second stage. So that is our second stage. This is our second stage already. And I feel that my second stage is a little stiff. You will have to do this a couple of times in order to get a feeling for it. So I'll slightly release the pressure on that. And that is too much. It's very fast too much. So be careful not to make the gun unsafe. And if it is unsafe, by the way, this gun, despite the fact that it's semi-auto, has the design that it has, it doesn't do anything crazy. It just, what happens is that the valve doesn't close, and you get a small gushing. The air will slowly leak, not slowly, but not extremely rapidly, leaked out of your barrel. That's it. It won't rotate the magazine, so it won't become a full auto out of semi-auto just because because the trigger didn't lock the hammer back, as if you go to the firearms conventional way of operation. So nothing dramatic happens. That's what I guess what I'm trying to say. Okay, so I can go on and put the shroud on, and when you put the shroud on, make sure that this part with the dent is located exactly where the screw is, the front screw on the clamp. So let's just slide it back on. You have to find the correct place to slide it fully in so that the barrel is inside. And then what you can do is you can look through this hole, and when you see a perfect hole through, then it's correctly positioned and you can put the screw in. Because this, of course, this dent also keeps the shroud from going off. Okay, so now you can put the screw back in. I have to turn the shroud a little bit because I noticed mine wasn't in the correct position immediately. So now it should be. Okay. And I'm still not tightening it. So now what I do is check if the gap between the barrel and the cylinder is approximately the same all the way, because I'm going to put now on the front clamp. And what I don't want to happen is that the clamp would actually bend the barrel in order to fit on it. So that's why now I will start to tighten these two screws. This and the front one as well, so I will tighten all of them. But just by the way, you can use a little more force. These do have to be tightened rather well, rather hard, but still make sure that you don't damage the screw by over tightening it. So in my case now, I'm not sure if you will be able to see this. Maybe if I do it like this, I get a perfectly even space between the barrel, the shroud, and the cylinder. So now I will put on the front clamp, and as you can see, in my case, I don't have to bend it at all to just slide it in. It just goes like with my pinky. No force needed. That's important part, because you don't want again to have the barrel bend because of this front clamp. Even if you want, you can also have your gun without this clamp. That way the barrel is truly floated. As I mentioned in the first video, I didn't really notice the difference in accuracy or the groups if I put it off, so I'm putting it on right now, back. Now the thing about this front clamp is that it's really hard to know the position where it has to be. That's why you will have to put the gun in the stock. Now I will have to zoom out the camera a little bit, otherwise you won't be able to see what I'm doing. Okay, so what I do is tighten one of those screws just enough so it doesn't move freely, so it's a little stiffer to move, just enough. And then I put the stock on the gun, or the gun in the stock as you wish, and make sure that this part is going through the hole correctly, otherwise it won't be possible to put it together. Okay, see that well. Okay, I have it in, and then I put it into the place. So basically I drag it back and forward so it's in correct position where the position in the stock is for this clamp. I usually wiggle it a little bit in both sides, so make sure that the barrel is actually controlling the position of the clamp, and then I put it out, put everything out, and it should stay in place because I tightened one screw a little bit, and then I start with the other screw and just tighten it a little bit, and then this one a little bit, and again you don't have to over tighten this. Actually it will also be okay if you don't tighten it at all. It can be free floating, that way the barrel controls how it's turned. And now we're done. Now we're just putting the gun in the stock. Make sure it sits properly. Which is slightly easier to do if the black part is on this nut instead of on the gun, because now you have to align inside the spacer, the black spacer, to go through here. And then what you have to do is throw in this rod that is for controlling the velocity, so the power, and then it goes only in one direction, so you have to wiggle it a little bit so it drops in, and in the end screw this nut back on it. Make sure that this seal is on it. This is not actually a seal, it's more of a rubber pad that is for it to press against the, so that the metal doesn't press and against directly to the stock. Now you put your tool, or in my case these pliers, in, and just screw it back in. Seriously, I'm not that clumsy when I'm not on the camera. Okay, don't have to over tighten it again. And you have to put the pin in over here. Use some plastic to push it in, plastic part. Okay, until it's flush. It was protruding on the other side, so I fixed it, changed it. And then, this can be a little tricky. This rod that we put inside here, it can be either too much out or too deep in. Depends on where your power settings was before you started to screw this in. So, because of that, my power setting was slightly screwed in, so the rod is now a little too deep maybe. Just let me zoom back in so you can see that better. So mine is slightly too deep now. So in case if it's too deep, what you can do is use this screw and just grab it and pull it out a little bit, which I will try to do now. Okay, let's try to use the Allen key. Okay, so I screwed it a little in, and now I will just pull it out. And now you will see that I'm turning it, so it will stay out. Okay, so now it's out, you see? And I've turned it a couple of times, so it will stay out, it won't fall back in. But don't turn it too much, because otherwise it will push out this ball bearing. And now you can put on the indexing wheel. So this has to fit on the square part of the rod. And in the end, just place the power wheel on it and just put in the screw and screw it in. Now, it is good that you, before you disassemble the gun, that you fully unscrew this screw as much as it goes, and you memorize the position of these numbers that are on the wheel. So later on, when you reassemble it, you can do the same. So basically, just fully unscrew. Yeah, it's already there because I did it with a screw before. And now all you have to do is loosen the screw again, place the wheel in the position that it was before you started the disassembly, and screw it in back in. That way you will have you will remain the same, let's say, position of the wheel for your power settings, and you won't have to memorize a different set of settings just because the power wheel is in a different position than it was before the disassembly. And that's about it. We screw this one tightly, that's important. Before you fill it with pressure, you can slightly move this gauge in order to be perfectly level. That is, if it's important for you. You cannot move it a lot, but you can move it as far so it seems nice to you and leveled. Okay, I think we are all about just about done. I will just put the bipod on, and then we will fill it with air, because this is also an thing I would like to show you how it reacts when filling with air from empty, from when the cylinder is empty to when it's full. This is the same situation when you have only the regulated pressure empty. Is the same. So basically you will know now how what to expect when you refill it. So okay, I will place it like this, and I'm going to get my bottle and I will start to fill it and show you. Okay, so hopefully you see both gauges. So right now the regulator is still not set, so that means that we should only fill this cylinder at first. So let's do that. So we're at about 100 bars, and I hear some leak, and this leak is not actually a leak, but the air is actually escaping to the second chamber. So basically I guess the regulator is not totally off. Okay, got it now. Let's fill it more. And don't do this too fast, because otherwise the tube will heat up and you might destroy your O-rings. Okay, because I don't want to overheat it, I will stop here now. And now, as you can see, we still don't have any pressure in the regulator chamber. And now I will turn on, I will start to fill the regulator chamber by setting the regulator. So I will turn it clockwise until I have the desired pressure. Okay, it's already rising, so everything is sealing up good. That's a good news. By the way, if you will change to 2 washers per side, so 2 washers each side, it will take a lot more turns for you to get the desired pressure. You heard that? It just indexed for 1, because when you fill it up with air, then actually the second part of the firing procedure occurs, which is indexing the magazine. That is because we just reached about 100 bars on this gauge. So let's go forward. You can see that this one is getting lower because the air from this one is slipping in the regulator. So basically we are almost equalize the pressure, so I will charge this one a little bit more. You don't have to do it like this. I'm doing this because I don't want you to wait while I fill this one to 300 and then start to adjust here. You can do this in one piece. Okay, we are at about 150 bars. We are trying to get to just over 200. And after that, we will take a few dry shots. Okay, again, we equalize the pressures. Okay, so my gauge is now showing 280, maybe even more bars. I have the wheel fully opened, and I will now do the couple of dry shots. When you do that, make sure that your magazine is empty, of course. Okay, let's do a couple of dry shots and see how the pressure changes. So it has stabilized to about, I will show you now the gauge from close up. It has stabilized now to about 150 bars. So we will go slightly further with the pressure. Okay, we are about 190 bars, and let's do a couple of dry shots. Always do enough dry shots that the gauge, because first of all it will start falling down, the pressure, and then at a certain point it will come up again, and that is what you want to see. You want to see it come up again, and that is the pressure where it has stabilized. So right now I have just under 170, so I'll do a little more and do a couple of more shots like this. Yeah, maybe a little more. yeah, that's perfect for me. Okay, now I can fill it up till the end. It's not hot anymore. Yeah, it's warm, but that's normal. And that's about what I have in my bottle. That's it. When you are finished with this, the rest is the procedure of my video, I believe number 2. Yeah. So basically, you have the pressure set. What you do is use your pellets and crony them and turn down the power wheel until you are satisfied with velocity. That's it. So thanks for watching, guys, and see you next time. Bye.